Years of effort. My sister's birthday party. For as long as I can remember, family gatherings were my way of showing love. Planning, organizing, thinking up little touches to make everyone feel special. That was my love language. So when my younger sister, Emily's birthday, approached last summer, I decided to pull out all the stops and host her party at our house in the Denver suburbs. The guest list eventually swelled to over 30. Siblings, cousins, old friends, neighbors we'd known for years. As I wrote out names on notepads, it struck me that nearly everyone coming had some special need or preference. But that only fueled my determination to make it perfect for all of them. Preparations began weeks in advance. Every night after work, I'd sit at the dining table with my husband, Michael, a cup of coffee in hand, jotting down ideas and color-coding lists. Who's gluten-free? Donna, my cousin. Who can't have sugar? Uncle Ray. Who gets anxious in big crowds? My friend Lori. Who needed a quiet corner? I messaged relatives to confirm RSVPs and dietary quirks, while Emily called every day, oscillating between excitement and anxiety about turning 35. The week before the party, I became a woman on a mission. I pored over recipe blogs and old cookbooks, determined to serve roasted rosemary chicken, mashed potatoes with garlic, a vibrant kale salad with homemade lemon vinaigrette, and, for the first time ever, a triple-tested, sugar-free chocolate cake. I even called Donna to ask exactly what grains she could safely eat. She seemed genuinely touched by my care, and that gave me a little extra spark to keep going. Shopping day was a marathon of its own. Michael took the morning off work so we could navigate the grocery aisles together, juggling 3 carts packed with fresh produce, giant trays of chicken, herbs, bags of lemons, and armfuls of sunflowers for the table centerpieces. Somewhere near the checkout, Michael grinned and said, "You do realize you're running this place like a Michelin star restaurant, right?" I laughed it off, but in my head, I was already assigning tasks and time blocks for the next 2 days. The afternoon before the party, I got to work chopping, marinating, baking. Our kitchen looked like a cooking show, set gone slightly wild, bowls stacked everywhere, the stand mixer whirring, the scent of rosemary and garlic cutting through the late July heat. I paused to text Emily a photo of the half-frosted cake, and she sent back a string of heart emojis. That simple reply made all the exhaustion worthwhile. By midnight, my hands were raw from peeling potatoes, and my feet ached. But everything was prepped as planned. Michael unfolded tables onto the backyard grass, running extension cords to string up fairy lights along the fence. Our son, Alex, 12 and always eager to help, dragged lawn chairs out of the garage and lined them up by color. "Looks great, Mom," he said, giving me a quick fist bump before heading to bed. I got up at the crack of dawn on party day, driven by a mix of nerves and adrenaline. The first thing I did was check the weather. Sunny, no rain forecasted. Thank goodness. Then I double-checked my schedule on the fridge. Chicken needed to go in the oven by 9, salads assembled at 11, cake frosted just before guests arrived. Michael brewed coffee and snuck me a donut, saying, "You're going to crush this, Linda." The hours flew. By noon, I had tablecloths laid with sunflowers in old mason jars, playlists queued for every age group, and a cooling rack full of lemon bars for the kids. The kitchen was a flurry of last-minute slicing and tossing, but it all felt right. Even the mess. I checked the chicken every 15 minutes, terrified of overcooking after all the effort. Michael poked his head in with a reassuring smile every so often. "They're going to love it, trust me." Alex hovered nearby, folding napkins and playing taste tester for the mashed potatoes. He gave them a thumbs up. Each little nod, each word of encouragement kept me afloat. When the first guests trickled in, the backyard came alive. Laughter, the snap of cold sodas,
I'm so sorry.
children dashing barefoot over grass.
I didn't know.
Neighbors gasped over the decorations, and Donna's eyes lit up when she saw her gluten-free salad. Uncle Ray grumbled, jokingly, about the lack of real desserts, but finished 2 slices of the sugar-free cake anyway. I moved from table to table, refilling water pitchers, greeting every newcomer by name, making sure Lori got her quiet corner with a good view of the yard. Emily's friends cheered when the playlist switched to her favorite Fleetwood Mac song. Even my brother Mark smiled as he herded the younger cousins into a group selfie. Throughout the afternoon, I barely sat down.
But who is she?
My hands shook from carrying trays.
Enhance the background.
My cheeks
Focus on the
ached from
tattoo.
smiling. But seeing Emily glow with happiness was all I needed to keep going. I knew I was tired, more tired than I'd admit, but adrenaline kept me steady. When Emily hugged me in front of everyone, beaming, "Best birthday ever," I felt a wave of pride and a familiar warmth in my chest. From the outside, it looked like a flawless, joyful afternoon, and for a few short hours, it truly was. After everyone ate their fill, the backyard hummed with conversation and laughter as the Colorado evening settled in. My mind spun with relief. It was worth every effort, every ache, and late-night strategy session. As I watched the guests gathered under the twinkling lights, I believed, just for a moment, that everything I'd poured into these years of family parties had finally been seen and appreciated. By Emily, by my parents, by all of them. If only I'd known what was coming next. The unexpected blow cast out of my own family dinner. The sun was just dipping behind the backyard fence, golden light giving way to the soft glow of string lights. After hours of laughter and clinking glasses, I was riding the high that comes when a big event goes off without a hitch. Plates were cleared, leftovers packed, kids running wild on the lawn. I slipped back inside to sweep up used napkins and refill coffee for the last stragglers, feeling satisfied in a way only a host truly understands. Just as I was stacking empty dessert plates at the kitchen counter, my parents, Thomas and Margaret, appeared in the doorway. Their faces were unusually serious. I could feel something shift in the room, an invisible tension pressing down on my chest. My mother cleared her throat, fixing her eyes on me. "Linda, can you come over here for a minute?" she asked, her voice formal, a tone she reserved for moments she wanted to make official. I dried my hands on a dish towel, heart picking up speed. Michael and Alex were outside, oblivious, laughing with the others under the fairy lights. Across the kitchen, my brother Mark leaned against the fridge, uneasy. Emily, the birthday girl, stood at the edge of the group, glass of wine in hand, wearing a half smile I couldn't quite read. Thomas spoke first. "We had a little family meeting out back," he said, gesturing vaguely. "It's something we needed to talk about." I swallowed hard, waiting. Margaret glanced at Emily and nodded. My mother's words cut clean and cold. "We think it's time for someone else to take over these family parties," she began. "You've done enough. Honestly, Linda, sometimes you try to control every detail. It makes it hard for the rest of us to enjoy ourselves." She didn't raise her voice, but her words dropped like stones in the quiet kitchen. Emily chimed in, louder than necessary, her voice high, with a brittle kind of satisfaction. "Honestly, Linda, nobody actually likes your food that much.
I don't remember.
We all just go along with it
swear.
because you take it so seriously." Her smile sharpened, almost gleeful, as if she'd been rehearsing the line all night. The words hung in the air. The clatter of a dropped fork from the dining room punctuated the silence. I glanced around. My cousin Donna stared at her shoes. Uncle Ray shifted, uncomfortable, fiddling with an empty coffee mug. Mark, my usually jokey, dependable brother, wouldn't meet my eyes. Suddenly, I felt as though I was shrinking, collapsing inward under the weight of their rejection. For a few heartbeats, no one spoke. I could feel 30 sets of eyes on me, guests and family alike, watching for my reaction as if it were another course to be served. My throat tightened and my cheeks burned, but I forced a calm smile. "Well, thank you for telling me how you feel," I managed, steadying my trembling hands on the stack of plates. No one argued. No one interjected. Even Michael, when he glanced inside and saw us all standing so stiff and awkward, seemed to sense this was one moment he couldn't fix with a joke. The celebration that had buzzed with warmth now felt eerily empty, as if someone had snapped out the lights. I excused myself quietly and turned back to my work, letting the hum of conversation fill my ears like static. As people trickled out with murmured thanks and tight hugs for Emily, no one said another word to me about the party or the food. The compliments I'd clung to during the night felt suspiciously hollow now, retroactively drained of their sincerity. Inside, I busied myself with the mess, scraping plates, soaking pans, wiping down the counters where flour and frosting still lingered. I could hear snippets of conversation from the backyard, jokes, retold stories, Emily's laughter rising above the rest. My exile from the family center was so sudden, so final. It left me breathless. In the solitude of the kitchen, the verdict echoed over and over. Too controlling, not good enough, unwanted. I replayed every step of the preparation in my mind, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Too many reminders about dietary restrictions, too insistent about keeping things on schedule, too eager to make things perfect. After the last guest had gone and Michael came inside, he found me drying a dish, my knuckles white on the towel. "What happened?" he asked quietly. But I only shook my head, not trusting myself to speak without breaking down. That night, as the dishwasher hummed and the house finally quieted, I lay in bed, wide awake. I scrolled through dozens of photos snapped that evening, Emily blowing out her candles, cousins grinning, Alex holding a sparkler. Underneath every smiling face now, I saw the new boundaries drawn, the line between us and me. My fingers hovered over the family group chat, but I couldn't bring myself to send another GIF, another recipe, another offer to help. I didn't sleep much. Instead, I watched dawn break over the neighbors' rooftops, the world outside going on as if nothing inside our yellow house had changed. But between those kitchen walls, something essential in me had fractured. I was no longer the glue of the family. I was, for now at least, expendable, and no one seemed the least bit sorry about it. The fallout cast aside, the family begins to fray. The days after Emily's party felt quiet, in ways I hadn't experienced in years. There was no long stream of thank you messages, no requests for recipes, no playful texts about leftover cake. The familiar rhythm of extended family life had shifted, leaving behind a dull ache and a strange, unfamiliar stillness. As the days stretched into weeks, my phone sat mostly silent, except for Michael's supportive texts or Alex's cheerful updates from school. I'd been benched, cut from the team, and the absence of duty should have felt like freedom. Instead, it stung, at least at first. At work, I threw myself into projects, picking up extra hours, volunteering for committees, even offering to organize a baby shower for a coworker. Anything to steer my restless energy away from what I'd lost. Michael noticed how I drifted around the house in the evenings, prepping more elaborate dinners than usual, cleaning even when there was nothing left to clean, nervously rearranging recipe cards I no longer needed. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me from the doorway, quiet concern etched across his face. Alex hovered nearby, sensing the tension, but unsure how to fix it. "You don't have to make us fancy meals just to prove anything, Mom," he said one night, poking at his elaborate stuffed peppers. "We like it when you just hang out with us." While our small family found a new, stripped-down sort of normal, the rest of the Walkers spun further and further into disarray. I heard about it from Sarah, my next-door neighbor, and sometimes confidant, who'd attended the party and was friends with several of my cousins. She stopped by for coffee one Saturday, her eyes wide as she filled me in. "So, who's organizing the Labor Day barbecue this year?" she asked with a sly smile. I ran into Mark, and he looked, well, stressed is putting it politely. I set my mug down and shrugged. "I have no idea. They didn't ask me. I guess Emily's in charge, or maybe Mom." Sarah grinned, but there was sympathy in her voice. "You know, from what Mark was saying, nobody really is. Your dad tried to rope in your cousin Donna, but she said she was too busy. Your uncle wanted a potluck, but nobody agreed on what to bring. Apparently, they've been arguing in the group chat for days, all over who should do what, who shouldn't be in charge, and whether it's even worth having." Sound familiar? It did sound familiar, painfully so. In the past, I would have smoothed over these squabbles with a group email, gentle reminders, and extra side dishes for the picky eaters. This time, I'd been erased from the equation, and my absence had created a hole they weren't able or willing to fill. As September rolled in, the reality of my exclusion set in for the rest of my family. The much-anticipated Labor Day barbecue, a Walker tradition stretching back decades, nearly didn't happen at all. 3 days before, I got my first group text from the family since the vote. It was a mess. Half the messages were complaints about schedules, dietary restrictions, and who'd actually committed to bringing what. At one point, Emily snapped in all caps, "Can someone just make a decision?" I stared at my phone, feeling a complicated mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Michael saw the look on my face as I read the jumble of texts. He squeezed my shoulder. "Don't go rescuing them again, Lynn. They made their choice." I didn't reply. Eventually, the family cobbled together a last-minute potluck. From what Sarah told me afterwards, it was a minor disaster. Someone forgot to pick up the burgers. No one brought ice. Cousin Donna's gluten-free salad wound up cross-contaminated with croutons, sending her home early with a stomachache. Uncle Ray complained loud and long about the lack of his special sugar-free dessert, while Mark tried to play mediator, only to end up in a loud argument with Emily over the playlist. Guests trickled away early, most muttering about next year's plans. There were no group photos, no games, and no sense of coming together, just a sense of something important having come apart. Through it all, I stayed quiet, deliberately distant. I went for evening walks with Michael and Alex, experimented with new recipes just for us. No one to please but my boys. We had movie nights and played board games. Sometimes, I'd catch myself looking at old photos from past family gatherings, the ones where I'd be front and center, serving slices of pie, orchestrating group selfies, shepherding kids into activities. Each time, I'd feel the ache, but also the faintest hints of relief. The pressure was off. The gratitude, fake or not, was gone. So was the endless weight of being the glue. A month after the birthday party, the failed barbecue seemed to mark a turning point. My phone suddenly lit up with calls and missed messages from nearly everyone in the family. Mom, Dad, Mark, even Donna and Uncle Ray. Their texts all carried the same theme. Can you help with Thanksgiving? Will you come back just this once? Things aren't the same without you. At first, I ignored them, deleting each message as it came in, almost ritualistically. Each deleted text washed away a little more guilt, a little more longing. Michael and Alex cheered me on for putting myself first. But it wasn't easy. I'd always been the fixer, the one smoothing feathers and patching holes. To ignore their pleas, no matter how earned, was brand new territory. Emily, unsurprisingly, was silent. Mark, on the other hand, reached out in a private text one evening. Sorry I let them talk to you like that. It got out of hand. I should have said something. I read his message, considered replying, but didn't. A part of me wanted to forgive him, to bring back that old sense of sibling camaraderie. But another part still stung from his silence on the night I needed him most. The family group chat, usually lively with memes and shared news, fell dormant. On Facebook, cousins argued about politics and football instead of recipes and event logistics. That energetic pulse of unity, messy and overwhelming, yes, but real, had gone flat. And, one by one, people drifted away. Friends of the family stopped coming to gatherings. Neighbors declined invitations. Even the annual holiday card began to shrink in size as fewer and fewer relatives bothered to send in their family updates. My parents, once so certain they'd made the right decision, found themselves presiding over smaller, stiffer dinners. At home, the change brought new rituals. Dinner was just the three of us, sometimes four when Sarah or Tom dropped by. Alex thrived with the calmer pace. Michael often remarked on how he'd never seen me so relaxed. You used to run yourself ragged making everyone happy, he'd say, handing me a glass of wine after dinner. I like seeing you choose your own joy. In quiet moments, I'd reflect on my new reality. I wasn't sure if the family would ever find its way back to the easy chaos of before, or even if I wanted them to. For so long, I'd defined my worth by what I could do for others. Now, I was learning to measure it by what I did for myself, in the small circle that truly saw and appreciated me. The ache hadn't vanished, but it was dulled now, overtaken by something resembling peace. And that, I thought, was a start. The truth unveiled. Family in distress, bitter lessons. Learned by mid-autumn, the silence between me and my family had settled into a strange, stubborn truce. There was no drama, no apologies, just a void, marked only by the occasional awkward message from Mark, or a family photo posted online by someone else. Life at home was peaceful as leaves, in the Denver suburbs turned gold and red. But there was a constant tug in the back of my mind, a sense that unfinished business still lingered. Then came my parents' wedding anniversary. It was a big one, their 40th, and in years past, I'd have been coordinating decorations, steaming linen napkins, and planning surprise memory collages. But after the vote that exiled me, I kept my distance. Emily, emboldened by her newfound leadership, had loudly declared in the family group chat that this milestone deserved nothing less than a grand, Instagrammable affair. She wanted to book a fancy event space downtown, hire a jazz trio, arrange for custom monogram desserts, and send out a calligraphed invitation to nearly 60 guests. She even set a budget, used $10,000. For weeks, the chat was filled with her spreadsheets, Pinterest boards, and smug updates about deposits paid. I watched from afar, sometimes reading the messages, mostly ignoring them. It felt strange being on the outside, but not nearly as painful as I'd once imagined. Still, there was a bitter taste Every time I remembered last summer's kitchen showdown, when Emily had disparaged my homemade dishes and my parents had thanked me for enough years of controlling everything. As the anniversary drew near, cracks began to show. Emily's tone shifted from gloating to anxious. Vendors canceled. The venue demanded more money up front. The jazz trio doubled their fee. Suddenly, a few days before the event, the flurry of updates stopped. The chat went silent. Then, one drizzly Thursday evening, as I sorted mail, my phone rang. It was my mother, Patricia. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. The next day, my father, Robert, tried. Twice. Finally, I picked up, more out of curiosity than affection. "Linda, honey, we need your help." My mom's voice was uncharacteristically soft. Emily's, well, she's had a bit of bad luck. "What's going on?" I asked, suspicion coloring my tone. There was nothing but the faint hissing of static. Then, Patricia exhaled sharply, as if preparing to confess something shameful. Emily fell for some kind of online scheme. She got scammed out of the whole $10,000 she set aside for the anniversary party. She actually owes another $5,000 on top of that. She's beside herself. I digested this silently, both shocked and, in a way, unsurprised. Emily's taste for drama had always been matched by her lack of attention to detail, the very thing I'd been accused of controlling for years. My mom pressed on, voice thick. We just want a small dinner, something warm and genuine, like you used to do. Would you come help? Please." The irony hit me so hard, I almost laughed. Gratitude in the voice of someone who'd once voted to fire me from family gatherings. "I'm not the family's party planner anymore," I replied, careful to keep my voice steady. Maybe ask the folks who supported Emily. I could sense my words wounding her, but I felt more relief than guilt. For the first time, I said a real no and didn't offer a single caveat. The fallout was immediate. Within days, I heard through Sarah that Emily's friends withdrew their help, embarrassed by the financial mess. The anniversary dinner became a haphazard potluck, cobbled together by desperate group texts. There was no jazz trio, no custom cake. Mark microwaved a store-bought lasagna, and someone picked up a vanilla sheet cake from Safeway. The rented room felt cavernous and cold, with half the guests canceling last minute after hearing about the chaos. My parents sat stiffly at their table in uncomfortable formal wear, and not even Emily's best stories could fill the void left by high expectations. After the event, my cousin Diane shared a few blurry phone pics, limp balloons, soggy paper plates, and Robert giving a half-hearted speech no one listened to. The expressions on everyone's faces were telling. Strained, awkward, distant. When Sarah, who dropped by the party briefly, recounted it to me later, she shook her head. It was like everyone was waiting for you to walk in and fix things. Instead, nobody knew what to do. Worst Walker party ever. This aftermath echoed across family text chains and group chats. I began to notice subtler changes, too. Patricia posted a vague, passive-aggressive status on Facebook. It's sad when some people won't put family first. Clearly aimed at me. A few aunts and uncles commented in sympathy, but my niece Claire, who'd always been quieter, responded in my defense. Aunt Linda gave years of love and effort. Sometimes people only appreciate glue when the cracks start to show. Claire's words made me unexpectedly emotional. For the first time since the rupture, I felt seen. As the gossip swirled, the pattern became clear. Emily's success had been smoke and mirrors, built on risky bets and little substance. My parents' confidence in her had faded to embarrassment. The family's faith in endless Walker tradition, once so unshakable, was rocked. Friends who'd always attended our gatherings stopped RSVPing. A cousin called to say that after that disaster, she'd rather host a small Thanksgiving at home than travel across town for another disappointment. Meanwhile, at home, I felt lighter. There were no frantic last-minute requests, no demands to mediate fights or hunt down someone's vegan cookies. Instead, Michael and Alex and I spent our evenings grilling in the yard or watching football, the autumn air crisp and clear. Sometimes I'd invite Sarah and her husband Tom over for burgers and s'mores, and Claire started dropping by with stories from college. She told me, "Our family doesn't deserve you, but I do. Thanks for letting me hang out here." Yet, for all the relief, there was an undercurrent of sadness, too. My parents' isolation was obvious in their voices whenever they called, their world having shrunk as their circle of trust diminished. But every time Patricia or Robert tried to drag me back, offering a weak apology, a backhanded compliment, or a request for just one dinner, I stood firm. I wasn't responsible for rescuing their reputation or fixing the mess Emily had left behind. I realized bit by bit that my worth had never depended on the elaborate tablescapes or even on the family's approval. Standing firm in my boundaries, though painful, delivered a freedom I hadn't expected. The bitter lesson wasn't that my family had let me go, but that I could let them go, too. The Walker legacy of perfect parties was cracked, maybe permanently. My absence had exposed the truth. What they missed wasn't my food, or my playlists, or even my organizational skills. They missed the peace and unity I brought, the sense of care and belonging that no dollar figure or Pinterest-perfect soiree could ever mimic. And for once, that wasn't my problem to solve. Building new happiness, rediscovering my worth in a smaller circle. Stepping away from my family's constant demands wasn't easy. For years, being the linchpin of every gathering, the person who smoothed out arguments and tied together holiday traditions, was not just what I did. It was who I was. But after that bitter fallout, with stark words and silence hanging in the air, I realized it was time to reclaim my peace and sense of self. I needed a new definition of belonging, one that wouldn't unravel the moment I refused to serve. At first, the quiet was overwhelming. My phone, once noisy with group texts, reminders, and last-minute, "Linda, can you bring?" requests, now showed mostly updates from my son Alex, cheerful messages from Michael, and the rare meme from my friend Lisa at work. The sudden stillness unnerved me for a while. I caught myself glancing at the family group chat, half expecting yet another urgent plea for help or a sarcastic comment from Emily. But it was silent, and I made it a practice not to look anymore. On the surface, my days became simple, even mundane. Yet within that simplicity, I began to notice things I'd forgotten. In my own life, in my own home, I took over the back porch in early October, setting up potted mums and thrifted lanterns as the afternoons grew shorter and colder. Alex would come home from soccer practice and kick off his muddy shoes in the entryway, leaving a trail I would have once scolded him for. But these days, I just sighed, then found myself smiling. I baked brownies on a whim for him and Michael, rather than for a roomful of picky relatives, and we devoured them together, straight from the warm pan. Michael and I started a Friday night routine, just the three of us, or sometimes with Sarah and her husband Tom, our neighbors from across the street. We'd drag out an old grill, throw on anything we found in the fridge, and eat around a folding table under strings of patio lights. It was messy, but genuine. Sarah joked that our impromptu dinners were the only parties worth RSVPing to these days. Alex, with his teenage
Jessica,
candor,
are you sure you
declared
won't
one
reconsider
night,
the offer?
"Mom, this is way better than
Father,
any
we
of those
discussed this.
giant
It's
family
final.
things." I didn't argue. I felt it too. I began to see how, in the absence of the endless labor to maintain a fractured family, space had opened up for real connection on a smaller, but somehow more meaningful scale. Lisa, my friend from the university library, invited herself over one chilly Tuesday. She brought board games and an old bottle of wine, and we spent hours laughing at Michael's terrible puns, while Alex rolled his eyes, but couldn't help grinning. It soon became clear that being valued didn't require spreading myself so thin I became invisible. These friends, my chosen family, as Sarah liked to say, loved showing up, not because I cooked the perfect meal or orchestrated every minute, but because I was simply present. No one cared if dinner was store-bought pizza, if I left a pile of laundry on the stairs, if the conversation trailed off into comfortable silence. I could finally breathe. During this new season, I also deepened my bond with my niece, Claire. She'd always been thoughtful and a bit reserved at big family gatherings, lingering at the edge of the crowd. After publicly defending me against my mother's online jabs, Claire started texting me just to talk. First about her college classes, later about everything from job interviews to her loneliness in the dorms. When she came home for Thanksgiving break, I invited her to dinner. There were only 5 of us around the table that year. No extended family, just those who wanted to be there. As we passed a bowl of mashed potatoes, Claire said softly, "I used to feel lost at those big parties, but here, it really feels like family." Her words wrapped around me a gentle affirmation that I was enough, just as I was. The holidays came and went in a blur of small, joyful gatherings. Snow blanketed the streets, and we built a snowman in the front yard with Tom and Sarah's little girl, sharing cocoa and laughter that echoed down the drive. I sent out just a handful of cards, one to my parents, unsigned but heartfelt, offering peace and closure for myself. Each evening, I'd light a candle on the mantel, feeling the rhythm of my own heartbeat, finally slowing from years of anxiety and obligation. Meanwhile, my former family's absence became less a wound and more a scar, a quiet, permanent reminder not to betray myself for anyone's approval. I heard through Claire that her mother, my sister Emily, was working late shifts to pay off her debt. My brother Mark shuffled between short-term jobs and rarely called even my parents. But instead of feeling sorrow or gloating, I felt a sense of detachment. My world no longer revolved around their chaos. I poured my energy into the community center downtown. Freed from catering to relatives' competing egos, I discovered a renewed passion for service. I volunteered to organize a holiday party for underprivileged kids. The planning was cheerful chaos, wrapping presents, making crafts, decorating cookies with sticky 6-year-olds who hugged me without reservation. Riding home after the party, with Michael's warm hand over mine on the gear shift and Alex humming in the back seat, I was filled with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Service given freely, not demanded, came back to me tenfold. Some nights, Michael would catch me lost in thought, gazing at my small circle as we laughed over silly movies or swapped family stories. He'd squeeze my shoulder and softly remind me, "You're the heart of what matters, Lynn. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." High praise from a man of few words, and every time I believed him a little more. By spring, what I once called loneliness had become contentment. I read. I planted daffodils with Alex. I took long walks with Sarah and met Lisa at little cafes on windy Wednesdays. Most importantly, I drew boundaries I hadn't known I needed, saying no with a smile, instead of guilt. Claire sent me photos from campus, her confidence blossoming. She wrote, "Aunt Linda, you inspire me to choose joy on my own terms. Maybe, after all the pain, I could be that for someone else." I didn't shut the door to my old family entirely. There were cards and the occasional stiff phone call. But my belonging had shifted. My worth was anchored now in those who saw me clearly, who held me up without cost, who made everyday moments feel like celebrations. Happiness, I discovered, wasn't about gathering the biggest crowd. It was about loving the people who truly want you at their table. And finally, I did, giving to receive. New meaning found in community. When I let go of the endless struggle to win over my family, I found myself standing in an unfamiliar country. A life defined less by ancient obligations and more by opportunity. The quiet in my house, once tinged with anxiety, became a canvas on which I could paint new meaning. Some days, this newfound space felt wide and bright. Other days, it pressed in with the weight of everything I'd lost. But even then, it dared me to reach further, beyond the borders of what I knew. That's how I found myself at the Denver Community Center on a brisk November morning, hands deep in a box of donated scarves and hats. The center pulsed with energy. Children's laughter bounced off the cinder block walls, and conversations in half a dozen languages mingled in the air. The director, Carla, greeted everyone by name, guiding people toward the food pantry, or signing them up for English classes, with a warmth so genuine it made me realize just how exhausted I'd been by forced politeness in my own family. It didn't take long before I offered to help organize the annual holiday party for local families in need. My reputation for being the planner seemed almost laughable. Here, nobody cared if I was the Walker family's former fix-it-all or just another volunteer with a stack of Post-it notes. The team needed hands and heart, not perfection. The stakes were different. And, to my surprise, so was the reward. Planning the event, I met people who looked me in the eye and listened, really listened, as we discussed budgets, decorations, and the best local baker for nut-free cupcakes. There was gratitude, but it had no strings attached, no grudges held over chores left undone. My niece Claire joined me, her shy energy blossoming among the other volunteers. We spent hours filling treat bags and laughing, our bond deepening with each new small act of kindness we shared. On party day, a blanket of snow dusted the city, turning the sidewalks into white ribbons, leading to the warm bustle inside the center. Kids streamed through the door in hand-me-down coats and mismatched mittens, squealing with delight as they spotted a towering Christmas tree and tables piled high with cookies and hot cocoa. Parents looked a little less tired for just a few hours, some swaying to battered speakers that played familiar holiday tunes in both English and Spanish. The best part wasn't the food or the crafts or even the gifts. I'd overseen so many similar details for my family. I would have thought they'd lost their magic. What moved me was the simple, unfiltered joy. Children hugged volunteers, parents clapped for a spelling bee, and wiped away tears during a silly puppet show. A little girl named Yasmin, maybe 7 years old, tugged on my hand to show me the ornament she'd colored. "It's for you. I put a lot of glitter. Is that okay?" She grinned, cheeks flushed with pride. For the first time in years, I felt needed, not for what I could orchestrate, but simply for being present at the moment someone wanted to share. The beauty of community work is that it can be loud or quiet, backstage or out front. It just asks that you show up. Over the weeks that followed, I packed food boxes, sorted donations, and helped run after-school game nights for the children of immigrants and single parents. There were frustrating days, of course. Supplies ran short, paperwork got lost, nerves frayed after long hours. But the gratitude was always real and immediate. Thank yous, scrawled in childish handwriting, awkward hugs, handwritten cards from parents who spoke barely any English. Claire thrived, too, freed from the tense Walker gatherings where she was always an afterthought. Here, she became the go-to big sister for a dozen younger kids, helping with homework and refereeing soccer in the center's cramped backyard. She told me one afternoon, as we loaded a car with food baskets, "I always thought you were strong because you could do everything. Now I see, you're strong because you kept going, even when nobody thanked you." It was the closest anyone had come to validation in all the months since the family rupture. I started seeing my old self from a new angle, too. Instead of the anxious fixer and rescuer, I found I could be a builder and a partner, even a friend, not just a servant or buffer. The rhythm of giving in the community wasn't frantic, but organic, a give and take that filled my cup instead of emptying it. Michael noticed the change in me first. One evening, after a late shift at the center, he met me at the door with a cup of tea and held my hands in his. "You have this glow these days, Lynn. Not the frazzled energy from before, but something calm, like you finally found somewhere to really belong." I didn't have words for my gratitude, but I squeezed his hands back, thinking of how long I'd searched for just this feeling. On a night in late December, the center staff surprised me with a certificate of appreciation, pressed into my hands as the kids cheered. "You make everyone feel seen," Carla said. "That's the best gift you could give." I teared up, because in a space that had no history of my failures or my old reputation to shadow me, I was recognized only for what I chose to share, day by day. I brought some of the center's warmth back into our home as well. Michael, Alex, and I started traditions of our own, inviting over neighbors who had nowhere else to go, cooking simple meals where no one commented on the tension in the room or critiqued the mashed potatoes. These gatherings weren't flawless, but they were real, and I could finally savor the sound of relaxed laughter in my own kitchen. Over time, the connections built with my chosen family became deeper, softer, and more sustaining than anything I'd once felt obliged to maintain. Lisa from the library helped me start a book drive for the children at the center. Sarah, my neighbor, came to craft nights and gave lessons in simple sewing, repairs. Even Mark eventually sent a tentative note, recognition from the past, but by then its importance had faded compared to the circle of friends and new family who showed up again and again. The truth I discovered, quietly and without fanfare, was that in giving, I gained back far more than I ever lost. Every small kindness, every shared joke or honest conversation, every frustrated but ultimately successful game night, they filled the holes that my old family's rejection had left. The sense of value I'd been chasing for years finally came to rest, not in being indispensable, but in belonging to others without conditions. As spring crept back into Denver, I looked around at my life and felt, at last, that I was living by choice, not obligation. Happiness wasn't something to orchestrate or win. It was something to share, freely, with anyone willing to show up. And in this wider, warmer, wonderfully imperfect community, I discovered a meaning I could claim as entirely my own. Healing, choosing forgiveness or not, and owning happiness. As the seasons faded from winter's hush into the soft return of spring, hints of green threaded their way through Denver's parks and gardens. It was in these milder days, with sunlight climbing higher and new life slowly shaking
I
awake,
know this is unexpected.
that I began
I'm
to
so
sense a
sorry, but we
shift
have to
inside
talk.
myself, a thawing, as much as any the earth experienced. The weeks of distance from my former family responsibilities broadened into months. The house felt steady now, grounded in laughter, familiar habits, the warmth of Alex's after-school chatter, and Michael's quiet, sturdy presence. Each day spent outside the old cycles of obligation gave me more room to rediscover who I was when nobody was demanding anything. Just Linda, present and peaceful. But true healing, I learned, wasn't simply a matter of moving on. The wounds left by betrayal, by years of underappreciation, and the blunt force of rejection from people I once trusted most, didn't vanish just because I'd reclaimed my joy elsewhere. No, forgiveness, or the difficult choice not to forgive, lingered, an unresolved chord I carried with me. At first, I believed forgiveness was a finish line, something to be earned through apology or to be performed for the sake of others. I waited, half expecting my parents, or even Emily, to call and offer real, unguarded regret. Instead, what came were brief, carefully worded emails from my mother. "Hope your boys are well." Sometimes, I got a Facebook post tagged with an old photo and a comment too vague to be an apology, too public to be private. Even Mark's late-night texts, "Hey, miss you. Let's catch up sometime," rang with his familiar guilt, but rarely crossed into full responsibility. For a while, these gestures irritated me more than silence might have. Did they not remember how harsh the words were in that kitchen? Did they hope enough time would soften my memory and my heart so everything could revert to what came before? Yet, as I leaned into the second life, filled with work at the community center, cozy board game nights, backyard barbecues, and heartfelt talks with Claire, I started to understand forgiveness as something altogether different. A release, not a bargain. Seeding the hope that the past could be patched up with speeches or shame. Letting go, not out of duty, but in the service of my own peace. For a long time, I didn't respond to my family's overtures. I wasn't angry, not in the hot, pulsing way I'd been in the days following Emily's outburst. Instead, there was a cool, steady understanding. I had a right to my boundaries, and I could make room in my heart for compassion without reopening wounds. I learned, through quiet meditation and late-night pages in my journal, that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing. It was about refusing to let their choices dictate my present happiness. Gradually, something shifted. On bright afternoons, I'd find myself thinking of old memories with less ache. Picnics long before resentment took root. Inside jokes on family trips. My mother braiding my hair as a little girl. These recollections no longer burned, but glimmered, like found treasures at the bottom of a drawer. I realized that choosing not to forgive, right now, didn't mean I would carry bitterness forever. It simply meant I named what happened, accepted the hurt, and allowed myself to grow in a new direction. The day came when I decided to answer one of Mark's messages, short and gentle. "Hope you're well. Things are good here. We'll catch up when we're both ready." It was more than a truce, less than a reconciliation, a statement of my willingness to exist in the present without lending energy to old wounds unless I felt safe to do so. Forgiveness, I came to understand, is a spectrum, not a destination. Some days, I felt generous and large-hearted, keen to believe the best in everyone. Other days, especially when the loneliness edged back, I was protective, certain of the necessity of my boundaries. Both were valid. Both, I learned, were part of healing. Through this slow work, I claimed happiness as something daily, intentional. Michael, ever grounded, supported these choices with simple wisdom. You don't owe anyone your suffering, and you don't have to rush your healing. We're good, right here. Alex, growing into his compassion, surprised me during a walk when he asked, "Do you miss them, Mom? Your family, I mean." I squeezed his hand and told him the truth. I miss what I wanted us to be, but I love what we have. Us, here, now. The smaller circle I'd once viewed as a loss had become a sanctuary. With Claire, I nurtured a kind of family formed by trust, not obligation. Our neighbors, friends from work, even the children at the community center. These became my extended circle of belonging. Each honest conversation, each act of mutual care reinforced the lesson that happiness flourishes in spaces where we are wanted and valued,
So in conclusion,
even if
the
those
evidence strongly
spaces
supports our
look nothing
hypothesis.
like what we
We move
imagined
forward with the
growing up.
interviews starting tomorrow.
Spring deepened, and as Easter approached, I received a handwritten card from my mother. The words inside were tentative. "Whatever happened, I hope life is treating you well. I miss having all of us together." For the first time, I felt a surge of sadness for her. Not resentment, but empathy for someone shaped by traditions and roles she hadn't been able to step beyond. I didn't write back, not yet. Someday, maybe, or maybe not. The choice, I saw finally, was mine. Not just about letting go, but about what filled the space left behind. Every day that I prioritized joy. Meeting Lisa for coffee, weeding my tiny vegetable patch, laughing with Michael and Alex over homemade pizza. I felt the old ache recede. In its place, the quiet, sturdy satisfaction of living my life on my own terms, forgiving as much as I wanted, withholding forgiveness when I needed, but always moving toward a deeper peace. I became attuned to the small, everyday wonders I once overlooked. Dawns, spent journaling on the porch, laughter over spilt cocoa, Claire's updates from college, and the comfortable silence between friends. Each became its own small act of healing, a declaration that happiness could and should be chosen over and over again. In the end, healing wasn't dramatic or definitive. It was slow and iterative, an act of trust in myself. Maybe someday I would welcome my old family back into my life, or maybe our distance would simply become the background over which new joys were written. Either way, I would stay true to my worth, embracing whatever measure of forgiveness or preservation felt right. Happiness, the kind grown by hand, in chosen company, on one's own terms, was finally mine, and I would spend each new day tending it, fiercely and gently, as only I could.